Top of the morning in my Dan Prof. I don't do it as good as Dan Prof. I'm not as smart as he is. Sorry about that, Justin. I shifted on you. In studio with my good friend, my brother, my pal, former ABC 7 reporter Charles Thomas. Charles, you know, when you look at this deportation that's happening, everything that's going on with Tom Homan, it's just I just saw a breaking news that there were 2 undocumented migrants. They're not in custody yet. I think they're soon to be in custody. They restrained the person with duct tape and electrical cord, and a guy from Norwood Park is now dead. When you think about just how this city of Chicago is not working with this with the Trump administration, with Tom Homan. Tom Homan had this to say about how he's upset with the pace of the deportation, and he talks about why.
Are you satisfied, Tom Homan, with the pace of migrant deportations?
No, we got to do more. We got to open that aperture up, which we're going to do. It was a great start. The first week was unprecedented. I mean, the illegal crossings on the border one day was like 540. I've never seen that, and I started on Border Patrol in 1984, and we went from 10,000 a day to under 600. So it's great, it's good, but we're not finished, and we need more deportations, a lot more deportations, and that's what we're working on.
What's your biggest challenge that's holding you back from capturing and deporting more criminal migrants?
Sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are difficult to operate in. You know, we'd much rather arrest one agent can arrest one bad guy in a jail in 10 minutes. But when they release him back in the community, we got to send a whole team to find him. And someone that don't want to be found. And it's unsafe for the community because you're putting a public safety threat back into the public.
Joining us to discuss this is a good friend of the show, Alderman Ray Lopez from the 15th Ward. Alderman Lopez, you heard what the borders are, Tom Homan, and I know you have been in contact with him. You've been working with him. This guy, George Levine, he's alive if this city and this governor would work with Tom Homan to keep people like this off the street, correct?
Good morning, gentlemen. Yes, I think that this is another example, as we've seen time and time again in this country, where you have a certain number of dangerous criminal individuals who are allowed to move freely throughout the country and are setting up shop in cities like Chicago and are protected and shielded by our political sympathies and wanting to be a true, unmitigated, welcoming city. And what that allows for is individuals to know that they could commit crime with impunity and never be turned in, never be deported, and never be held accountable for their actions.
Yeah. And you know, Alderman, you tweeted out that story from CWB. I mean, the 16th and 17th District Chicago Police Scanner, and there's another story you tweeted out about, and the story was about New York, Tren de Agua, or however you say it. Why are we trying to pretend as if this is a very violent gang? They've taken over neighborhoods, they've taken over apartment buildings in places around the country. Why protect people like this?
I mean, let's really call them what they are. You know, in Chicago, we think of gangs as the guys hanging out on the block throwing up gang signs. These individuals are borderline cartel members. They are oftentimes military trained because, especially in countries like Venezuela, military service is compulsory. So they are trained as military individuals at a young age, and they are banding together in our cities. And many of my liberal colleagues and progressive colleagues want to continue this fanciful image of the immigrant with being a husband and a wife and a baby in a backpack running to America for a better life. And unfortunately, that's just not the overall image for everybody. That may be true of about 98% of immigrants overall, undocumented or otherwise. But there's a 2 to 3% of that population that is criminal, that is dangerous. And we've seen that play out in New York, in Denver, in Chicago here most definitely, and cities all across this city and all across this country. And we don't even have to pretend like it's not true because we've seen, especially in L.A., when asylum was given in the late 80s and 90s to folks, to Venezuelan and South American migration. That's the origins of the MS-13 gang that has terrorized L.A. for decades. So we know how this story is going to play out, but everyone has this fanciful image that they're trying to maintain, and you have a mayor in the city of Chicago right now who is completely disconnected from reality, who thinks that somehow standing up against Trump in this effort to go after these individuals is the sword he wants to die on. Maybe he should be more concerned about the fact that this little number slipped last week that nobody really went with, which is that CPD and ICE confirmed that there are over 2,000 criminal migrant high-priority targets for ICE because they are dangerous and criminal in their behavior. 2,000 individuals. And that list was because the Biden-Harris administration knew who they were, knew what their crimes were, knew how dangerous they were to our national security and to our communities, and let them come to Chicago anyway. And never allowed ICE to go after these individuals, didn't tell CPD about these individuals, and force them to come and live amongst us in our communities. And that's why we're seeing what we saw unfold in Norwood and other locations where now they are acting out because they know that their time is up.
Alderman, this is Charles Thomas. How do individual police officers handle this? Have you heard of any of them dropping a dime to inform ICE about what's going on the street so that ICE can do its job, or are they on board with this whole sanctuary city ideology program, whatever you want to call it?
Well, Charles, I don't think that they're on board, and most law enforcement officers, especially in Chicago that I speak to, aren't on board with this, but they are going to follow the law. And they are going to do what municipal code requires them to do. And they're going to do it with a little bit of resentment, knowing that they have the opportunity to remove a threat but can't do anything about it. Our officers oftentimes have arrested many of these same high-priority targets that Tom Homan is looking for. And if we were able to coordinate or even just run their name against the ICE database and let them know that we have them, these high-priority dangerous individuals would be removed from our communities immediately.
Wow.
Full stop. However, they also know that in this administration and in this environment, they're likely to lose their career, lose their health insurance, lose their pension, lose their whole life if they were to ever try to violate that. So they're not going to do that. And I don't know of any stories where they have.
So what about Larry Snelling leadership at this point? Is he just caught in the middle, or is he just...
I think our entire police department, from Snelling on to the POs on the street, are caught in the middle, as you say, because they know who these individuals are. A friend of mine, Terry Newsom, who you may know, did a FOIA on many of the migrant shelters and uncovered that in many locations, including the shelter like the one that I had in Gage Park, in the shelter in the Chicago or the Standard Club by the Harold Washington Library, you had 20 pages of dangerous arrests in 1 year period.
Wow.
Drug, sexual predation, things of that nature, prostitution, all of these things. If we had amended the welcoming city ordinance or left in the carve-outs that were previously there, we would have been able to let ICE know that these individuals were there and to allow them to come deal with them for their actions.
Yeah.
But instead, we have to arrest them, release them per the Safety Act, because drug use or gang stuff or gang-related or prostitution is not considered a detainable offense anymore, and put them back in the communities. So we have the Trust Act working against us, the Safety Act working against us, and then you have the Welcoming Cities Ordinance working against everyday good people.
Yeah, Alderman, I don't know. Has the sanctuary city status ever been challenged constitutionally? And have you thought about, as a private citizen, challenging the status of it to protect the rest of Chicago and the state?
I don't know if anyone has ever filed a lawsuit. And I think personally, this might be one of those areas where I disagree with maybe the overall concept with some of your listeners. But I believe that we can be welcoming to individuals because, to be perfectly honest, in the city of Chicago, especially seeing how dysfunctional the federal government has been since the late 1980s when amnesty was given, I don't want to be in the business of trying to figure out how people got to the city of Chicago. That's not my job. But I definitely am in the business of making sure that you act right once you're here.
Right.
So letting individuals in every community know that regardless of your status, we will be here to help you as a city is one thing. And that's also in the welcoming city. And I think that should remain. But I think that if you choose to engage in dangerous criminal behavior, then you got to go.
Yeah.
And I believe that if you're arrested for it or convicted, then I should be able to let ICE know that we caught you.
Yeah.
Now, there seems to be where the disagreement is with some of my colleagues, because should you wait till they're convicted or should you other things? And we're going to have that debate. But I think at the end of the day, to just say that we're going to welcome everybody, even if you're a murderer, child rapist, or a human trafficker, doesn't make sense to anyone, and it needs to be amended immediately.
Well, the mayor has been called to Congress. I don't believe they compelled him to come. I don't believe it was a subpoena. It was just a request to come. What do you think? And I'm shocked that he hasn't taken full advantage to go out there to give his perspective of what's happening in Chicago. You think he goes?
I think eventually he is going to go. He likes playing these games of chicken, but if you look in his interviews, that man's got to be changing his drawers every hour on the hour when he has these interviews.
He's sweating.
He's sweating. He's doing something. But Congress is not going to take his actions and his arrogance lightly. And he can try to deflect from here and word salad his way out of a better, safer, stronger Chicago and bring up the Confederacy and colonizers and the Civil War and everything else under the sun that he wants to talk about. They're not going to want to hear that. But they're going to want to know answers. And especially now under the cloud of what we've heard about the 63-year-old man who was bound to a chair, beaten and killed.
Yeah.
That's Lincoln Riley number 2.
Yes.
For Illinois.
Yeah.
So, and his city,
Yeah.
while he's trying to defend why they should not go.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to have to answer for why he refuses to address this issue. And I think there's going to be some other bombshells coming out shortly.
Yeah.
With everything that we're doing for the migrants, where the $624 million disappeared to that no one ever wants to talk about. Because that's also what they want to know. What have you spent? Who are you giving it to? Why are you doing it? So
yeah. Well, Alderman Ray Lopez, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us on Chicago's Morning Answer. I really appreciate it. I'm going to give you a call because I would love to have you come on my Detroit's Morning Answer show to discuss what's happening in Chicago, too. Does that work for you?
We will do it live from the mayor's gift room.
Alderman Ray Lopez,
cool.
15th Ward Alderman, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with John and Tom.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer.